You're listening to the AFTERBUZZ TV Network, now the largest new media platform on the web, and your #1 source for after-show entertainment.
Very good, Gene. Johnson.
From the AFTERBUZZ Studios in Los Angeles, California, presented by Maria Menounos and streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies, this is AFTERBUZZ TV's The Walking Dead After Show. We'll break down tonight's episode and get you all the latest news and gossip. And now, another post-game wrap-up show for your favorite TV show. It's AFTERBUZZ TV's The Walking Dead After Show.
Hey guys, and welcome to the final finale of The Walking Dead. I thought this was a great episode, so I'm excited to get started. But first, with me tonight, the lovely Derrial Christon.
Hey, what's up, Walkers? How you doing tonight?
And next to him, the fascinating, coming up with all these random descriptions, Nando Velasquez.
Thank you very much for that. Fascinating.
And next to me, the nothing, Kristin Carole. I'm out. I only had 2 descriptions. That's it. And guys, I'm Dave Klein, but we have a very special guest with us. You may know him as Eugene Porter, Dr. Eugene Porter, but the Dr. Josh McDermitt. Not actually a doctor, I don't believe.
Did you just call me Josh?
Josh.
That's the
Josh
first time anyone's ever
McDermitt.
called me Josh.
Yes, that's
But,
what I saw on IMDb. This JOC.
We're already making history.
There's like an X in there.
We're making history already on this show. Historic. Josh.
Josh.
It's just JOX.
Let's trend it on Twitter.
Yeah. Hey guys, how's it going?
All right, Josh, thank you so much. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the episode. So we had, starting with this scene of Rick, but before we get into that, it flashes to a flashback with Rick, and he's back with the group, back at the prison. And something I was kind of wondering was, when did they shoot this part of the episode? Did they just get the whole cast back together? Because a lot of these characters have been killed off at this point. So, or did they actually have the notion to film this back at the beginning of the season?
I'm guessing this was all part of the plan. But what I love about these flashbacks so far is that it really ties in the end of season 3 to the beginning of season 4. Because there were definitely some questions, I think, that were left unanswered from season 3, mainly about Carl shooting and killing an innocent.
Yeah.
And I loved all that. We got to see Herschel. It took a little while to figure out exactly where it happened, but it obviously happened before the virus, so it was definitely between seasons 3 and 4.
I was trying to keep an eye on Judith, because I know we had Brighton, and she was saying that Judith was getting a lot bigger as the filming went on. So I think she looked a little bit younger, at least, you know, that's what I was trying to gauge in terms of her size.
I feel like a lot of what they were doing in this flashback was establishing this theme in the episode of humanity and what is humanity and retaining it, which we've seen in other episodes too, but that seemed to be a constant theme throughout this episode with everything that Rick ends up doing and Carl's thoughts and just retaining that, and especially through this farmer side of becoming a person again and just not being in survival mode, and this is a way to live for now and kind of living in the moment and enjoying things for the moment.
Who are we was a big question that was asked a little bit later on in the episode that Carl and Rick were going over, if they were going to reveal who they were to Terminus, and really they were questioning who they were throughout the whole episode, who everybody was.
Yeah, and that was just a big theme of the season then. It's like, who are you and can you get back? Can you go back to how your life was and who you were? And I feel like, you know, Rick was getting there with as Farmer Rick and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then he doubled down in the opposite direction with this episode. So now he has even further to travel back to get to like some sort of base sense of morality with him, and that's it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out in the next season.
Yeah, I like that term. He really did double down there in terms of escape from this moment of Farmer Rick. We get on the chat, Owen Harper saying that according to Scott Gimple, it was the final scene they shot within season 4. So they actually shot all season 4, and then they did the flashbacks. So according to Scott Gimple, so. There we go. So they actually got everybody back together
Bring Scott Porter back, and
I was thinking like that's great for some of the actors who, you know, who's died off, that they had another chance to, you know, come back and
do some more shoots,
do some more shots.
I'll have to watch Talking Dead when I get home. Then, if he revealed a lot of stuff.
Yeah, Scott, should have done it last week. What Scott? How about, what are you doing? Should have revealed that last week on our show.
Well, when my first episode that I went out there, I think was episode 10 of the second half of season 4, and of course we know that Herschel was killed. In prior, what was in the finale?
Yeah, in the mid-season finale.
Yeah, mid-season finale.
Yeah.
So,
Episode 8. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, coming into the show, that's the one guy I wanted to work with. I wanted to work with him and the governor. That was it.
So you really got your wish. Oh, wait.
I didn't even get a chance. So when they brought Scott in, and I read the script and I saw that he was going to be coming in, I was like, oh, finally I get to meet him and everything. And I didn't get a chance to, because obviously I show up at the very end of this episode, and I didn't do anything with him. But I was a little disappointed, I'm going to be honest, man. But it was cool to have him come back, and, you know, because he was certainly one of my favorite characters on the show.
Yeah, but you got to meet everybody else.
Yeah.
Except for those two.
And the governor, didn't meet him either.
I like how you're just like, yeah, no, that's nearly as exciting. It's so disappointing.
I met Patrick.
There you go. You met Patrick?
I met Patrick. They brought him in. And I didn't know who he was because I hadn't seen nothing had aired yet, you know? Yeah. So I was just like, who's this kid? I didn't care, you know? He's like, hey, and then it all made sense.
And you're not a Phineas and Ferb fan either, I guess, so.
No, I don't have children, so I
there
I don't watch those shows. I'm sorry.
He's like, no.
That doesn't sound like a firm statement that you don't watch those shows. I saw your eyes dashing to the side as you said that.
Like, right, guys? You do believe me, right?
Totally. Why is the mullet gone? That's my real question.
The mullet's fake, man.
That's awful.
That's why it's gone.
Actually, I tweeted you when you were having like a mullet Twitter day.
A mullet chat.
Yeah, you actually answered one of mine. I asked, so is it real? And you put half. So I wanted to ask you, get you in the studio and go, so what does that mean? Like, is the top half real?
Yeah,
the bottom half's fake? How did you work that?
It's, I mean, I guess we can say that I'm going to be in next season, right?
It seems pretty, it seems like it you are.
I mean, unless like there's something that didn't happen at the end of the episode that we missed. Like, oh, you just only got shot through a train bullet hole.
I'm just trying to be sensitive to someone who's like being an idiot and listening to this first before they watch the show. And they're like, wait, why did he just say that? But no, so my hair's about this length in the back normally, and then they just clip in extensions and they dye it brown.
Okay.
And they cut in a flat top.
So the business part's real, the party part's
the party is fake.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Got it.
And I hear on set it's called the mullet of life, like someone gave it that name.
Yeah.
And who gave him that name? Or gave it that name?
Vincent, one of the hairdressers, he and this other guy, TA, one of the other hairdressers, they would just like whisper to each other. They're calling it the mullet of life. while Taylor, the lead hairdresser, she's like taking care of the mullet and everything. And I hear them whispering this. I'm like, what are you guys whispering? And they're like, no. And this went on for like a week. I kept hearing them whisper something about the mullet. And I said, just tell me. And they're like, man, it's the mullet of life. It's the mullet of life. You know, if you're dehydrated, if you're tired, if you're thirsty, whatever, you're like out working in the elements, just come to the mullet. Drink from the mullet of life. That's what they would say. And it was so disgusting to think about that. But they just call it the mullet of life, man.
I love it. We got the hashtag.
Come get recharged.
Yeah, hashtag mullet of life.
I got Dire Straits in my head for some reason. I feel a parody song coming on or something.
Oh, okay. Let's write that, Nando.
We'll do it. Let's do it. Yeah.
There we go.
After the show. After the show.
What I wanted spontaneous right now.
Yeah.
But let's get back to the episode at hand with coming back from these flashbacks, and we get Rick, who this moment where we're going to see what's going to happen with him, looking completely the opposite of everything in the scenes that we've been seeing Farmer Wick with blood all over him. Farmer Wick. I'm really messing up all my names here. Can't pronounce R's anymore. But
he's shaking, hysterical.
It's okay, Dave. You only got 3 hours of sleep.
Yeah, I did only get 3 hours of sleep.
Just so our listeners know.
Yeah, that's why it's not. I don't normally act like this. Maybe. So, Rick, Michonne, and Carl are all hanging out together, and we have this moment where they're still happy and things are still good. Carl and Michonne kind of acting like best friends still, claiming how many portions you're gonna have. 15, no, 28. That's or on the scale of how hungry you are. So this fun scene with them before everything goes down, just to establish like, hey, everything's good with them. Rick teaching Carl how to hunt rabbits, and then they make the fatal mistake.
Yeah, and they're hunting the rabbit. Him showing about the slip knot and everything was kind of what they ended up walking into was a trap.
Yeah, that's
beautiful foreshadowing of the explanation.
Yeah.
And I feel like Walking Dead does that so often. I mean, we've been talking about the mid season finale where, which I just rewatched because they had the marathon, and the governor was talking to Megan about the chess piece, and he was standing between the tank and then the home, and he had to make the choice. And I feel like they do a lot of good parallels with that.
Yeah, they do a great job with that.
Absolutely. Sure. And the hunter group then, after that, doesn't snare them in the trap, and they end up Joe is just going to go all out on them as Derrial comes out to protect them. We find out not only are they going to first kill Derrial for lying, as now he claims that Derrial has lied, calling them good people, but he's going to rape not only Michonne but Carl. So
well, that one guy's gonna rape Carl. Like he doesn't
well, that
wanna
one
wait.
specific guy. But I mean, Joe's okay with it.
And
I mean, he did claim him.
Well, I guess he did.
They did claim him. You're right.
They claimed.
That was creepy. Just that guy, you know, first, I'm hoping the actor's a really nice guy, and he just kind of, you know, made it extra creepy. But him, like, watching Carl in the window even, just, like, freaked me out, and it was a parallel to the comics.
The whole scene, because when you first see that truck from the opening scene with Rick shivering, and you see all that gear on the floor, it just was done so beautifully, and to see it from nothing to all of a sudden just Joe just popping up from behind.
You know, honestly, when it first showed that scene of him shaking, I thought there'd be more damage to his group. I didn't associate immediately that it was the blood of others all over him. I thought, like, oh, maybe it was like he was beat up too.
Yeah. Because it was a solo shot, too.
Right.
It was just him. You didn't know what happened or who was around, and so that kind of just led you to go, oh, my gosh, what just happened? Is Carl dead? Because he was, if you just looked at him, he not only was he shaking, but he was vacant. Like, he was just like, he couldn't even grasp onto who he was at that point.
Yeah, it made me think that somebody was taken. I wasn't sure how quickly, like, if they would, you know, kill somebody off right at the beginning of the episode, or if they were just gone, you know, like, we're going to take your boy from you, and who knows what else would have happened in between there, because we didn't see Derrial right away either, which was definitely something where you're like, well, he has to say something.
But then we immediately get into this moment with this whole kind of, to me, theme of humanity, but also who are you in the moment and who are you going to be, where this is who the claimers, as we've called them now, the claimers reveal who they really are in the moment. Yeah, thanks to Scott. The claimers, they reveal their true selves in this moment. And Rick reveals another element of himself that we've sort of seen in the past, but just this moment where he's willing to do anything it takes to protect Carl. And rips out the throat of Joe. So brutal, but also really awesome. So hey, you know, whatever you got to do to protect your kid.
You know what's amazing, too? We glossed over this because it was really a minor point, but I just thought about it. We got to see that one guy right after they were talking about the trap that was surrounded by zombies, and one of the walkers just totally chewed his cheekbone, kind of almost in a similar type of way that Rick went into that guy's neck.
Yeah.
Which really kind of shows just shows really a similarity what Rick became. He just became completely, like, turned off and just animalistic.
Oh yeah, I mean, the moment you see that, I think the first association is that's what walkers do.
Yeah.
The moment you look at it, because he didn't really even use his arms, he just went right in and dug him into his neck.
And I think it showed his pack leadership. I mean, we've seen him kind of do.
He's a wolf.
He's a wolf. He's seen him transition from. There was a point where Carl was looking at him as like, is he still a good leader? And it just reinforces the fact that he is still the dominant leader and should be the leader.
Bahaha Val saying hardcore Rick mode unleashed. And Owen Harper saying Rick's new motto, Carpe Jugulum.
Seize the jug. Jugular.
I mean, I don't want to speak for Andrew Lincoln in this situation but I didn't really have a lot of conversation with him about this. But we were all having dinner the night after they shot that scene, and I know it really tore him up because he's very much a method actor. So I want to believe that if they allowed him, he actually would have bit Jeff Kober's throat out if they would have allowed him. But I know that he was pretty tore up about it, and you know, this is a I don't want to say a new low. That's not necessarily the right words for this, but it's like this is hitting a level that this show hasn't hit before.
Yeah.
You know, where someone has just been so feral. You know, and just so animalistic, like the way you put it. And it's scary because it's like, where is this going to go?
Yeah.
You know, because they go to this point and they keep trying to get back to some sort of normalcy, but it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And it's like, you know, it's really interesting to see where this is going to head.
Yeah, and it's a new extreme in that moment. I think that would be a fair term.
A new extreme is great, a great way to put it. Yeah, and because you know, like I said, he is very method, so he likes to be like when in the scene where a few episodes ago where he was strangling the guy in the bathroom. Yeah. He was so in that, and I had heard from one of the writers that they were trying to call cut. Because the camera moved funny or they wanted to reset it or whatever, and he was still strangling the guy and screaming, "We're not cutting," and he's like still trying to choke the guy, and you just go, this guy's committed.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
He is
dedication.
committed.
moral of
Yeah.
the story: don't be an actor who has to be attacked by
Andrew
him,
Lincoln,
By
yeah.
Andrew Lincoln.
Well, because he even keeps his accent the whole time too. That's what I heard. Is
Yeah.
like if you go on set,
Yeah.
he won't do interviews because he doesn't. You know, he has to keep his Rick
He
voice.
stays as Rick the whole time, and then you know, if his kids are around, then he'll speak with this British accent because apparently they're young and they freak out. Why is Dad talking
Like,
funny?
Daddy, no.
But just knowing how like method and into it he was with the neck biting
Yeah.
scene, you know, you can just imagine like how that is going to affect someone, because just as a viewer, I'm affected by it. Going,
Yeah,
oh
for
my
sure.
gosh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was intense.
And yeah, his character is absolutely shaken by what he's done, and just as you said, vacant. Nando, just vacant.
Well, don't forget, I mean, we could talk about the neck biting, but the last shot before the commercial break, you just kept hearing him stabbing Joe
Oh, yeah.
over and he was like gutting him like an animal, and then you just kept hearing multiple stabs. There were like probably 15. I didn't get the chance to count all of them. There were at least like 15 just over and over again. So this is a man who is...
I mean, this is someone who's about to rape your kid, though. I mean, that's like...
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
even
wasn't-
like outside The Walking Dead, I could see people going that extreme for something like that. That's...
But there was a point of no return. It was just the explanation point to the whole thing. There was really no return.
I mean, I liked seeing this change in Rick. I also wasn't too shocked because, like, I mean, for me, if my mom watches, she's gonna laugh. But I feel like she would do that to protect me if it came down to it. I mean, if there's some guy that's trying to, you know, do stuff to me and she doesn't have a weapon, I think she would have like bit out his throat. Like, that's a Chicagoan in her. I
That's
think.
it, right. That's like, go mom.
I gotta need to
But,
go to
you
your
know, I feel
Facebook
like-
profile, see what she writes on.
I feel like a lot of parents, you know, would try to figure out something. I mean, if that's the only weapon you have, you use it.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, to me, as animalistic as it was, to me, it's like, well, it doesn't have to be The Walking Dead. I could see any parent really doing this if they really truly care for their kid. Not that a lot of parents would want to, but I think that instinct just pops in. That's just a very perennial instinct.
But you know what? This brings me back to also seeing this happen and seeing him commit himself and just stab the hell out of him. The 3 questions that he asks every time they want to let somebody in, and they're about to go to Terminus, and he is pretty much just killed these guys and maliciously and for whatever reasons. And I think this is part of questioning you. I think those 3 questions really, from the beginning, like you said, it's a full season long. These 3 questions really tell you who you are. What kind of person would kill walkers, kill people, and why?
But again, to me, like, his why for this whole thing is they were about to all be killed, and his son was about to be raped. I am completely okay with what he did, 100%.
Oh, for sure.
Like, I had no qualms with it, and even as animalistic as it was, I'm like, good for you, Rick. I'm glad. I'm glad you ripped his throat out with your mouth.
At the same time, if you're answering that question to someone else and they say, you know, and why, and you say, well, we were going to be killed, well, that's your side of the story.
Well, that's also where you leave out the part where you ripped his throat out with your mouth.
Yeah,
when you're telling the story
there's that
again.
sort of thing. But there was, when they asked Bob Stuckey, played by Lawrence Gilliard, they find him on the road and they ask him those questions and they say, how many people did you kill? And he said 1, and they say, why? And he said, because she asked me to. Like, that's almost like you can tell that he didn't want to.
Right.
Yeah.
He asked me to. For Rick to come in and answer that question, well, we were going to be killed. Yeah, that's one side of it, and it just makes this guy untrustworthy at that point.
Well, I mean, when you add in, they were going to kill us and rape my kid, that's also who's this
But
like,
again,
small
yeah.
13-year-old boy.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
kind of also like...
look, I'm not saying it's not justified. It was completely justified. But I mean, it's not a it's
I don't
not
know,
a
Josh,
fun
learning
question
some
to
new
answer.
things, man.
But look what it turned.
You were
But, you
Team
know-
Joe, right?
But look what it turned you to. I mean, if someone like Bob, if he walks in Terminus because he had to kill someone because they asked him to, walks in completely different than someone like Rick, who just saw his kid about to get raped and his friend about to get raped and him about to die. You saw, I mean, the way they walked into Terminus was all like, you know, weapons up, going in through the back and everything. I mean, there's a different kind of person. It really does
No,
say
it
who
is.
you are. And this is a scene, and you know, even those flashbacks, what I loved about those flashbacks, especially during the first half, because we saw Rick's first shot was he was just gone. He was gone. And who was the moral anchor to that group? But Herschel. So of
Herschel,
course he's thinking back to times with Herschel and what Herschel was telling him. And it really was interesting that right after that whole scene with Rick going crazy, they cut to a flashback of Herschel telling him to, you know, I have it written down here, to show Carl the way. and to teach him to farm and
Yeah,
to be
that
a
was
certain
good.
way. I
Good
mean, there's
point.
a lot of really great lines in that scene with Herschel right now.
Yeah, then it's
actually.
like, what is he showing Carl right now through his actions? Is really
Yeah,
the
he
question.
says,
at
what
least
way
to.
are you going to show him?
Yeah, exactly. So it was like the perfect scene. I teach
The way
you.
of the wolf.
I
The way of
teach
the
you.
wolf.
You teach Carl. We're going to be here a while. The war is over, Rick. Thinking, and it kind of reminded me of the proverb of the two wolves.
Yeah.
That I don't know if you know the proverb of the two wolves. That everyone has two wolves, a good wolf and a bad wolf, and they're always fighting with each other. Which wolf wins? The one that you feed. So you feed the bad wolf, and it's going to take over. You feed the good wolf, and that's the one that takes over.
Yeah.
So that kind of reminded me of that proverb for some reason too.
I think it's kind of interesting still that that Rick doesn't see that there's not as much good in Carl. I mean, I think we all want to see the best in our kids, and maybe that's the reason why too. But when Carl jumped not too far ahead, when Carl is talking to Michonne about that they have a monster part of them inside, and he's like, my dad doesn't think I'm as good as I am. I have a monster too, and I think Rick just doesn't want to believe that. But every time I watch, I'm not sure how much I enjoy Carl half the time.
Yeah.
But it was kind of interesting to me that Carl even admitted that I'm not a good person most of the time.
Yeah,
But
go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, well, also, I think it's that, but it's also like the psychological effect that Carl's going to have, because he did see, even though Carl's not your average little boy, clearly he's a warrior, but to watch his father stab the guy, what sound like 15 times, and just so
Right.
graphically, even when they're showing his face, it's like, what type of psychological effect is that going to have on him as he moves forward?
It's just
too?
earlier, he killed that one kid who maybe could have, been a good person, and without any reason, we saw, that was last season, I believe.
Yeah.
When he shot him, and it's just like, Carl's very removed, and I feel like sometimes people forget like all the bad stuff that he's done, and
Right.
it's like, yeah, you're still trying to protect him, and you should try to show him the good way, but I feel like he's a little too far gone to be that really perfect kid that Rick wants and that Lori was trying to raise.
He is too far gone. I mean,
Yeah.
Rick comes in and Patrick is playing Legos.
Yeah.
The irony. Carl is cleaning a gun.
Yeah,
You
the
know,
total
and he
irony.
says, "Put
Yeah.
the gun down. Come here. I want to show you something," because he wants to have a boy back. He wants to have a little boy, and he realizes that his son is becoming, a monster, if you want to use air quotes there. Just like, he's seeing things and doing things that no child should do, but unfortunately, that's the reality of this world.
Yeah.
And my wife had even asked me when we watched the episode. She said, before the guy was going to try and assault Carl, she said, "Do you think Carl knows what the guy was about to do?" And I said, "Well, yeah, of course. Except if you really think about that, who knows? Because he was so young when this whole thing started that he probably didn't know what a sexual assault was."
No, I was actually wondering that too, if Carl actually did know and understand what the guy was about to do or not.
I mean, has he had a sex talk? Has he
Yeah,
has
who
he
knows?
learned about stranger danger? Like the things that you learn in a normal world, but it's like that kind of stuff probably takes a back seat in
But
this
even that
world.
type of stuff usually happens when you're a little bit older than Carl is too. Like
Yeah.
when, I mean, I guess he's 13 at this point, and maybe you would know that, but it's still just like something that you don't think about too much until you get older, like
Yeah.
those types of dangers.
Yeah.
So I honestly don't know if Carl really understood what he was about to do.
I don't know, because Carl did have that crush relationship on Beth, so it's
seemed
like,
that.
what could he have learned some things from that, or just had conversations with her with that experience, and maybe he was more mature in that area than what we think he is.
So Joseph Bose is saying that these flashbacks did a good job tonight of setting up the finale in general. But back with Carl though, and how he's acting right after Rick and did this and everything, and how distant he is from his father.
Yeah.
I'm actually. This is kind of. I felt like they shortened it. Brief comic comparison. I think they shortened it compared to when something like this happened in the comics, and I'm glad they did, because from my perspective, I think as animalistic and horrible as the visual of what Rick did was, and mainly that accent of it, I think he did what he had to do. And to me, it was like, well, Carl needs to realize that he did the only thing that he could do. It was surviving in the moment. And if Rick had another option and to bite someone's throat out, I'm sure he would have taken it and did try to do it initially.
Let's not forget that Michonne also reveals her past too.
Yeah.
Right.
And that she also had a very similar
situation.
where her boyfriend and his best friend were high when I guess the zombies came in and Andre died. So she took her revenge on them. And she felt in the same way kind of a monster. She said she was far gone with them as zombies when she cut off their mouths and their arms, and she was just like one of the zombies.
But I mean, to me, again, it's that humanity aspect, like how much of a monster are you? How much of a human are you? And I think really the idea is just with her, what she's saying is that everyone has a monster in them, but that's okay because we can bring back our humanity and we can come back from that. So there are moments where you're going to turn into that, but you can come back from it. And I think that's what happened with Rick, was in the moment of this survivalist moment where you have to do it, you have to do what you have to do to survive in this world, but you can still come back, and that's what he keeps on trying to do. And as you're saying, Josh, it's getting further and further away from that point, but I think that's always the point that she's trying to bring out, is no matter how far gone you are, I was gone for like a year, you can come back.
Yeah.
But they do get to this new group, so we get to finally everyone's suspicions have been affirmed. Yeah, as much as Scott was trying to tear us away from that,
Big
or steer us
time.
away from that.
It's like, it could be nice, you guys. Him and Michael, like,
I mean, they
think
had children
they must have
toys.
talked.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's probably just this nice place for once. I
Anytime,
mean, give it a break.
anytime somebody would ask me about Terminus, I'm like, it's great. Like, yeah, they don't have a prison, they've had no hope, and they're all going to try and get back together. What a great place to go regroup.
Mary makes the best barbecue.
It's a special sauce.
It's a very special sauce.
Very special sauce.
Well, first of all, what I loved was, I mean, they kind of set it up when they were coming in because they weren't following the rabbit trap. They were going around which I loved. So right then and there, I'm like, this has got to be a trap. This has got to be a trap, because it totally set up the foreshadowing from earlier, which I loved. So again, I just, every single conversation in this show you have to like pay attention to, because it comes back.
Details.
It comes back, and I love that.
They're good about that. Yeah, just the whole funnel and just the way. I mean, I think when we were watching it, you know, I heard some people commenting like, "Oh man, they're a horrible shot," and then it's after about like, you know, 3 scenes of that, you start to realize, oh no, they're
leading
funneling
them in a certain way, and then Michonne says that right at that moment. So it's like, yeah, man, they're just trying to funnel him the way that the trap was with the rabbits.
Yeah, at first we're like, they're stormtroopers. They are not shooting anybody. Like, this is terrible.
Well, and then also, like, I think for me the moment of realization was like, and this is easier to notice with subtitles because we had subtitles while we were watching, was someone yelled out, "Bring them over to B," or like, "Get them out of B." It was get them out of B. And as soon as I saw the subtitle, because it was hard to hear it, I was like, oh, they're trying to lead them. That's why they suck at shooting, is that they don't suck at shooting. They're just trying to lead them. Because every shot was on the ground so clearly, I was like, what? Why are they that bad?
And if you notice, like, every door they ran through, the letter A was there, which was the name of the episode. You know, and the train car said A. So obviously they have B, they have other letters, and depending on, you know, which car is full, who you know, what they've done with them or whatever, I imagine they just go, let's send them on this route or that route, you know, for the people that they need to.
So they A like the prime meat? Like, is it a grade?
Grade A.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't know. I mean, everyone's speculating that they're cannibals. I honestly don't know what's going on.
The only reason I thought that too, at one point when they were running, we saw all these bones in a yard, and just one of them looked like ribs at one point
like
too.
human ribs.
We didn't get that good of a look at it, and then just, I mean, whatever, Mary's cooking.
Well,
on that
so
grill,
you're constantly seeing that barbecue is always represented. Like, the first thing you see in Terminus is this barbecue, and then the second big moment is like, welcome back to Mary, have some barbecue food. So,
and they were making a point to like showcase
and then like
eating
Rick
it, too.
smacking the food on the ground too. So I think that was the other thing. But before that, let's rewind a little bit. We get the group coming in through the back door, not trusting, and meeting up with everyone in this possibly cannibal group. I mean, we really don't know yet, but possibly. And we get the group now. We get to meet some of the people. Gareth, who's the leader, who's clearly established as the leader, so we get to find out who's leading all of them. We get someone on the radio constantly trying to bring people into Terminus and establish hope for people. Although she sounded kind of robotic to me. It was maybe a radio voice-ish, but it sounded robotic to me. Like, it's just like, I don't know, it's like a toll-free line that you call trying to explain something very clearly, I suppose. But it still sounded robotic, which was indicative to me of like, I don't know about her.
That whole scene brought about one of my favorite lines, or interactions, I guess, where they're patting down Derrial, and I think his name was Alex, was, I'd hate to see the other guy, and Rick goes, you would.
You would.
Yeah, that was a great line.
Yeah.
It's like when they throw that stuff in there, because the whole episode I thought was really suspenseful, and I like when they throw a little bit of comedy in there.
So Owen Harper throwing out to us the definition of terminus, which is A, either a final point in space or time, an end or extremity, or the end of a railroad or other transportation route, ore station at such a point. So I mean, that would make sense for this. It is the end of a destination route terminal. But I mean, I kept on thinking like associating like Terminus sounds like Terminate to me, and that's why it sounds like a bad place.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny about time because time was definitely mentioned a lot by many people throughout the episode. Herschel mentioned it when he lost the watch. Joe mentioned it when he was starting to count down, and then when Derrial wanted to defend them, he said, "I got all the time in the world." There was a lot of references to time, so it kind of is interesting that it probably does play into a final point in space and time. So
That's interesting. I didn't pick up on that, but you're right. I mean, I remember hearing that, but I didn't put them all together. That I'm wondering what the significance of the time was in that. Maybe it is because they're coming to the end.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. I mean, that's. It also wouldn't surprise me. I'm sure people will do it if they look at the pocket watch again when he says, "Where did you get this?" If you see what time it is, I'm sure that was done specifically as well. We didn't.
That's a
Yeah, that'd be a good detail to watch for.
They don't do anything just by chance. Everything is thought through.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I do like again that callback though with the watch, and that was something that we seen earlier in the episode. It was one of the earlier flashbacks that we see the watch, and just the Rick noticing that like, oh, that's the watch. And
I don't know. Did we see it? I didn't see it, but I
well,
just
we don't
remembered
see it, but I mean, you get that mentality. So as
Herschel-
soon as you realize it's a watch, you're like, oh, Herschel was talking about a watch.
that he gave to Glenn.
Right. So even without showing it, I guess you can still pick up on that from the beginning of the episode. So I like that callback to earlier.
No, I love that.
So they do end up stormtroopering, not really, but they do end up getting herded like a cattle. It really felt like a cattle herding to me.
Yeah.
That's the other
Oh,
thing,
yeah.
which to me felt like cannibal type of thing. This feels like herding cattle. You're herding the livestock. That's really how what I felt like. But they get herded into and as they run through this giant ritual-looking area.
Yeah.
That Nando, you were taking a lot of notes on.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, we talked about this. Actually, I wanted to talk about this with Scott last week, but we ran out of time. But when we had Glenn Mazzara on, we were talking about a lot of the stuff that was written on walls in reference to Clear, I believe it was. And he said Scott had a lot to do with those things, and a lot of them sometimes had really important meanings or little Easter eggs in there. So that room was just really weird, and especially after they were trying to trust these people and they just didn't trust each other. It said, never again, never trust, we first always, which I thought was really interesting. So obviously these guys never trusted anyone going in from the start. And then we saw that somewhat bird's eye view of what looked like a ritual circle of all these candles and all these names that we paused. And we didn't really recognize anything in the names other than we saw numbers with them. So there were ages. And I think one of them we said was a city and a state.
Yeah,
so
Wilshire,
Wilshire, California. One
yeah.
of them.
So
and then
really,
they had like the football and the dolls next to it as well.
yeah, so I guess
Yeah,
some of
there
us
was
were
guitar.
thinking that maybe those were names of people that they killed. And they also had mementos, next to all of them, like dolls and soccer balls.
They came a long way from Wilshire, California to get to Atlanta.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, but it's a question of were they part of the group that died, or were they people that came in that they killed? And I think that's kind of the big question that hopefully, next season they'll address.
Well, and we shouldn't forget either that Rick buried a bag of guns.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
they just need one person to get out and
They-
to
you
grab
cannot
those to
forget
help
that.
out.
He says, because his line was, he's like, I don't even know if Derrial asks him what, but just Rick just senses it. He just says, just in case. And it's like, well, you're going to need them.
You definitely need
You're
those.
trapped.
But as they do get trapped in the train cart, they meet up with everybody. They meet up with Dr. Eugene Porter.
Reunited.
Well, that was one of the things too. As soon as they started coming up, I'm like, okay, there's Glenn. All right, there's Maggie. Like, where is
I was
was, like,
noting
checking
that
off
too.
the
I'm like,
names.
okay,
Yeah.
here's this name, here's this name. Is there anyone missing?
Well, when we shot that, because we're actually in a train car, and we were all kind of crammed in there, and the camera crew's on the other side, and they were trying to film us all and get us all in there. So they were, telling us specifically where to stand and don't lean, and Stephen Yun was kind of leaning to one side and blocking where I was, and I remember that we had to keep doing it, and they're
Steven!
like, lean on your left leg, not your right, and so that I could be seen. And the take that they ended up using, Stephen comes up, and you can't see me for a moment, and I had forgotten that we had that issue with him, and for a moment I'm like, wait, did I die? Like, I didn't know. Where am I? And then he moves, and I was like, oh, thank God. But, yeah, we're back.
You're like, they didn't tell me that. They didn't tell me that I died this episode.
That's what I'm afraid of, man. I don't know how they let you know that you're dying. I think they just edit you out somehow.
The phone call. Didn't they say
Yeah.
there's
there's
the
a phone call.
The infamous phone call.
And then you'll go out to eat together.
A
Did they
death
do
dinner.
that,
The final dinner. Or the
Yeah,
last
they had
supper
like
dinner.
a final dinner. Do they do
final
the
supper.
red
The
final
velvet
supper.
cake, or is that somewhere else? I can't remember.
I'm not sure. I just remember the phone call.
No,
the dreaded phone call.
whoever dies, it's their choice on what they eat, on where they go.
Is it? Okay.
That's what I remember hearing. Yeah.
Yeah, Scott Gibbles called me a couple times about things, and you just can't get a phone call from him without freaking out.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
all, you know, it's even like, hey, you know, do you want to come? We're all, you know, going doing karaoke tonight or whatever. And I'm like, why are you really calling?
Just
Like,
text me. Just text me.
Do you just like let him go to voicemail and be like, oh, okay, this is okay?
Yeah, if I just ignore his calls long enough, then it'll
I'm still in
prolong
the
like
cast.
that,
I'm
I
still in the
think.
cast. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the way to get through it. It's fine. Fine.
Well, that scene when they revealed everyone reminded me of like the Justice League. It's like Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman all together again, all in the same place.
Yeah, I felt the same
You know what I
way
mean?
too.
The
I'm
way
like,
it was
oh, this is
shot.
the group.
It's the group.
And then Rick had the perfect line for it
did.
after the whole group's like all together, which is just like
They're screwing
these
with
people.
the wrong
Yeah,
people.
Yeah.
these people.
Well, I will say this: he, when we were shooting that, he, you know, because he's so in it, that is the line. But he kept saying they're effing with the wrong people.
Oh, was
And they're like,
I think I like that version
I
better.
like that
for the show.
more.
Yeah.
That's what
that'd
but they're
be
like,
if
do it
HBO
again, do
had
it
it.
again. They made him keep doing it again, and he
I
kept.
thought you could say that on
saying-
AMC.
No.
I
You
don't
can't say
think
that. You can just drop the.
He just
shit
bit
bomb.
someone's
bomb.
neck. He should be allowed to say effing.
I
you
know, but so I
He
think
should just
they-
be like, son of a dick.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
there we go. Perfect.
But the one version he did, where they said "screwing with the wrong people," that's obviously they're like, finally, let's just use that and move on. You know?
But I still love. They're gonna feel pretty stupid when they find out. Find out what?
Right.
Yeah.
Find out what? I almost thought they were just gonna cut it from there. I was like, no, don't leave us hanging on that line. I want to find out what he's talking about. But
It's a fun group, like you said, the Justice League and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like everyone's showing up, and I was getting excited, just going, man, look at all the different people here, and everyone's back together. It's like, if you're gonna be in this perilous situation, this is the group I want to. You know, you got brains, you got brawn, you got everything you could possibly want in that group.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be so much fun to see what happens.
It's the A team for sure.
Yeah.
in the
The
box,
A-team,
in
in the
the
A
A card, the
In the
box
A
car
card,
of
the
death.
box-
Avengers Assemble. I'll go to Marvel and
But I gotta say, this was a great way to wrap up this season to get you excited for the next one. I actually found this to be the most exciting episode of the season overall, because this group and the ending of it with everything happening was just, to me, a whole lot of like, wow, this is crazy, what's going on? Like a whole different group that's so different than anyone we've met before, and the way they act, completely different. And we're in this completely new perilous situation where everyone's a prisoner, and then it leaves you like, wow, I really want more. So I think they did a great job leaving a giant cliffhanger.
Yeah,
for
great
us.
cliffhanger. I think the first real cliffhanger we've had from The Walking Dead out of any of the seasons, because they've usually ended with some kind of big fight and then they move
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah,
And
they
I was
pick-
ready
they
for like a
pick up-
resolution of some sort.
Yeah, between like seasons 1 and 2 or something, they reference that they've been several months through the winter or whatever. It's like, okay, I mean it's like they're not gonna skip time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they can't.
But
We
what
gotta
if they
have-
do? We don't know.
I mean, if they,
They'll be dead. They'll be eaten up already.
They do, and several cast members are dead, and they just never address it. It's like, wait, what?
Or
What
they do
happened?
flashbacks, like
There'll just be
slowly
flashbacks of like
throughout the
people
season.
eating, and you're like, why is it just flashbacks of people eating?
Well,
And then a commercial of KFC.
Well, because there's still 4 people, if you include Judith as a person, a little person, that we don't know about.
Yeah.
So we haven't seen Beth for a few episodes now. Derrial, I was really surprised. He didn't say anything about what actually happened, and
Yeah.
I feel like he just gave up on that. Maggie seems to like not even care about her sister. As soon as she found Glenn, like I haven't heard her mutter like
That's true. That's a good
Yeah.
point.
Beth's name at all, which I think is really interesting that nobody's really thinking about her.
They all care about
and-
Dad, but they don't care about each other for some reason. It's
Yeah,
weird.
it is really. I
Yeah.
feel like most of the brother sister teams on there to an extent, like even Sasha kind of gave up on Tyrese pretty easily, and it just seems to be like, and even though Rick calls Derrial his brother and stuff like that, you kind of heard him a little bit talk about like, I wonder what happened to Derrial, but I feel like they all kind of gave up on their siblings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sibling love.
That was huge, by the way, I think, that when he called him his brother, because, I mean,
Yeah.
his brother
Yeah.
being Merle,
Yeah.
and also it just goes back to who are you? I mean, I think Derrial was struggling with who he was in comparison to his brother, and when he was doing talking about his own past.
Well, there's also a nice moment with Derrial where he's trying to explain to Rick, like, and feeling guilty clearly about everything
Yeah.
that happened, and Rick just right away, it's just like, it's fine. Just don't worry about it.
That's
it's fine.
not you.
Absolutely fine. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
He said
Like,
anyone would have done that.
Yeah.
And Rick did say no, not anyone.
Not
Like
anyone.
you
Not
know,
anyone, yeah.
which is true. I think there are some people that might struggle with that sort of action, but you know, Derrial was right. Yeah, anyone would have done that. Everyone would have protected their child
Yeah.
that way. But it was such a sweet moment when he said, "Hey, you're my brother."
Yeah.
And
That was
just like,
great.
It was great. But then it was also kind of heartbreaking at the same time when they were talking about Beth, and he said, "Well, is she dead?" And Derrial said, "No, she's just gone."
She's just gone. Yeah.
And that's
That
it.
means he's moved on, and he's like upset, but he's had to move on. He said, "She's just gone."
I think
You
it
know?
probably also was his mentality with the group, though, that they were starting to get at. Was just, well, they're just gone. When he was with Beth, they were trying to.
I think so, but I almost feel like he was willing to sacrifice himself to Joe earlier on. So I almost feel like that was his way of, you know, trying to make up for maybe losing Beth in a way.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
he was willing to sacrifice himself. That's something I don't think we would have seen in season 1 or season 2 from
true.
Derrial.
I think it's sad though that you would think finding them would be hope for him to kind of maybe continue to look for Beth a little bit. I mean, it's a little hard when they drove off in a car and he couldn't chase
Yeah.
after
Didn't see
them
what
as
she was-
much.
yeah.
That's all tough.
But I still think that would have been something that he would have said, because now Beth was teaching them that there's still good people out there. There's still, you know, our group could still be out there, and then all of a sudden,
And then all of a
he
sudden, he
finds
meets this
them.
cannibalistic group of good people.
Well, and that'll probably be the next conversation too. Now that they are together, I'm sure they're going to start piecing the pieces. Like, who did you see? Was there anyone else out there that
Yeah.
you had communication with? Even though they're all in the back of that train together, but
I mean,
think
how
that'll be
much
another
time
conversation.
do they have back there?
Right.
To go back to the time thing, I think that's another cool reference that it comes around to at the end, because it's like, now they're in there. How long are they going to be?
So Baha Val having commented about, I hope Carole and Tyrese were close by, that they heard the gunshots and don't go to the same trap. But I mean, I think they'll probably possibly end up there. But I think that's a great thing with what Kristin was talking about, is that we still don't know where they are and where they're going to end up, and they are still another element where if they do end up there, you know whose side they're going to be on.
Well, we know they were heading there.
Right.
Because they didn't want to stay at that house together.
And we know that they ran by some voices on their way through that ritual room or whatever. They heard some voices. They
Like
were
in
saying,
another
"Help me."
container.
Yeah, another container. So that's also a possibility
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, so we also get something that we kind of glossed over from Joseph Boza. It was interesting that we didn't see zombies in this episode eating it all, and Baha Val correcting him. We actually did see the
That
one
one.
guy, which brings us to the other thing with Carl wanting to save that guy at first, and immediately hearing someone calling for help, and he runs, and Rick goes to stop him right away. It's like, we can't do it. And right away, even before seeing the situation, Rick is like hesitant about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think he's just trying to be smart. Again, it's all about protecting Carl. So, I mean, we saw that to a lesser extent in that scene, and then we saw it to a more extreme extent a little bit
Yeah.
later. So it's all, and even toward the end when he didn't want to leave, he didn't want to go into that train car without his son.
Yeah.
So really, that's just his go-to, man. That's his mentality.
And then everyone's trying to get determinists. I thought it was interesting too that at the beginning, Carl asked Rick, "Are we going to tell everyone everything that we've done at Terminus?" So, and it's like kind of like foreshadowing, obviously, for them going there, and then of course they end up being captured. So it's like it's crazy.
Yeah, he was asking that question before even more hell broke loose.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, and it's like, gosh, man, if you were struggling about telling him about before, it's like, there's no way you're going to tell anybody
no way
about
you
that
guys-
now.
exactly.
But the
Dad,
thing-
shut up about that. You know.
Who wants to mess with? Who wants to really mess with Rick? I mean, when he obviously says that last line, you're like, yeah, we saw what this guy did a little while ago. So who
Yeah.
really wants to mess with Rick when he's pissed off?
Yeah.
So nobody really. Yeah.
But guys, we do have a special guest here with us, so we should probably talk about it. Before we get to that, though, I should mention that we do have we do this show just the goodness of our hearts for you guys. We love doing it, but something we'd really appreciate is if you can go on iTunes, rate us positive or negative, whatever you think. Just let us know your thoughts. If you think we're doing a good job, let us know. If not, let us know constructive feedback. How you think we can make the show better, so we can try to make this show a better show for all of you guys who listen and watch. And do comment on YouTube. We love getting your guys' comments, and we try to respond whenever we can. But with that said, let's go ahead and talk to Josh about what it's been like and your experiences on The Walking Dead.
It's been amazing, man. It's been the best job. I don't know what my next job's going to be, but it's going to suck compared to this one. It's literally, it's a dream come true, because this was my favorite show.
Yeah.
I would get together with friends, and we would all watch it every week, and I never thought I would ever even get an audition to be on it, let alone be on it. And that's just really a dream for any actor. You know, and I have a comedy background, so I was on a sitcom for a while, and the whole time I was doing that, I was working on my dramatic side, and I knew I could do drama, but it was, it took some time to convince other people, like my agents and different casting people, that I had that in my tool bag, so to speak, to use like an actor's term. But for it to all pay off, I mean, how often do things pay off, man? Like, I just didn't. I still pinch myself, man. It's really exciting.
How was that process for you? Because I know they don't tell you what the character is or anything like that. Was the character that you ended up auditioning for similar to Eugene, or how did that go about?
Yeah, he's very similar. Yeah, they're very secretive. They don't really tell you the name or anything, and just the fact that like Daryl's not in the comics, but he's on the show. It's like I didn't know that they were just doing a fake name. I honestly don't remember the name was Wayne something, but I thought, oh well, maybe this is just a made-up character. But they're really descriptive as to what they want to achieve with that particular character. So all the material they give you has nothing to do with the apocalypse. It's all kind of like a scene or a clip from that person's life before everything went bad, and yeah, so it was just pretty much like a 6-page monologue where I was like berating some woman over something, just like throwing out a lot of technical terms and stuff that I really had to look up because I'm a lot stupider, I'm a lot dumber than Eugene.
I think most people are.
Yeah, so you just kind of go through that whole thing, and then the producers called me back a few weeks later and gave me another 6 pages of material to go through, and I was just like, oh my gosh, man. And it wasn't until after the fact. I had a feeling it was Eugene, and Scott Gimple had called me and was telling me, hey, by the way, it's Eugene and this and that, and I just went nuts, man, because at that point I had started reading the comics, and I became a huge fan of that trio and what they were doing. And I mean, to be able to play a guy with a mullet on TV,
that's badass.
Now that's the real dream come true.
Yeah, that's what I really wanted. So yeah, it was a tough process,
I mean, that's also a moment, I guess, reading the comics when you find out who he is. It's just like, oh, well, this is actually a bigger character too. So that must have been a great realization.
Yeah, I guess that could be a fear, is to roll into a show like this and you're just the person who just kind of stands in the back and you don't really do anything or whatever. But to have such a significant role, and like even the articles that the PR team at The Walking Dead were releasing about Eugene was saying, it was a pivotal character and all that. I was like, oh man, maybe this is a bigger deal than I thought. Like, I didn't know, And so that's what really became exciting, is to just see how excited other people were about it, just to know that this is such an important character.
When we had Michael Cutlitz on last week, he mentioned, because he had the orange hair and the whole thing, so he definitely hid away for 2 months as to not give away that he was on the show as Abraham. I'm guessing since you could take the mullet off, you had a little more freedom with the cast for the 2 months? Or?
Yeah, I had a lot more freedom. Michael's recognizable from Band of Brothers and Southland and that sort of thing. And, he and I we spent all our time together, and we would just go to dinner in, rural Georgia where we're shooting. And people would walk up to him and they just go, and this was before it had been announced, and they would say, "What, are you like an actor or something?" And he's like, "No." He would just flat out deny it because he just didn't want people to know, start putting 2 and 2 together. And so he thought that if he were out with, the rest of the cast just having dinner or whatever, just the mere fact that he's recognizable, they would know that he's on the show. So he just really distanced himself from that. Nobody knows what I look like. So
well, that's about to change.
Yeah, well, I got recognized in New York City on the street, and I was like, what? Because I don't have a mullet right now, and that just blew me away because that never happened before. But yeah, Cutlitz was really good at it. But for me, just the fact that I could go out with them was great, because then I wasn't going stir crazy. And it was interesting to see. We'd be at dinner and people taking pictures from across the room. Now, people didn't necessarily come up, but they would take pictures. And right there, that made me go, I'm glad Michael's not with us. Because look, I just look like
how
some
would Michael
guy.
Feel?
Well, no,
You're
I
glad
told him,
he's not kidding.
Because I would say, man, just come out with us. Just come out with us. He's like, no, I don't want to. And then you'd go and you'd see people snapping pictures, and I say, you're lucky you didn't go. Because if you look at that picture, you go, oh, well, there's Glenn and there's Maggie or whatever, and I just look like some guy, But if he were there too, they'd be like, well, this guy, he must be doing something,
They're put together
and give you all away then.
Yeah,
they start putting two with you.
Yeah, so he was really good at staying put, and then once that was announced, he cut loose a little bit.
What was it like working with him?
I'm still processing it, man. He's a really good friend, and take everything away from The Walking Dead and just that whole experience, and I got a great friendship out of that, and that's really what I care about. But on top of that, I learned so much from him about acting. I was a fan of his before, we started working together. So that's really awesome to be able to have like a mentor in a sense, And he's just cool. He's kind of like a guy that I want to be in 15 years, because he's almost 50. He hates it when I call him that. I tell him he's old man.
Spoiler. His age.
He goes to bed at 4 p.m. But he's just like a very generous, sweet, gentle man, and completely opposite of kind of the brute that he typically plays in shows and movies. But then that side does come out every once in a while where he just doesn't put up with any BS, and it's fun to be around him. He's a great guy.
I heard when you first came on the set too, and even before that, the rest of the cast was welcoming you.
Yeah.
With like Steven was sending you emails, or did Andrew come to the set and stuff?
Yeah,
too?
Steven was sending emails and saying, "Hey man, if you need anything, here's my info." And I was like, "Wow, that's cool." I was on another show where people weren't as nice, So I was like, "Oh, awesome," because you're definitely intimidated walking into this situation. It's it's scary because it's a big show, and you don't want to be the guy that screws it up and that sort of thing. We shoot an hour south of Atlanta, and most of the cast lives in Atlanta. That's where Andy lives. And he drove down an hour on his day off just to meet us and to have lunch. You had no other reason to be there. And he gave us the lay of the land. He got us caught up on the season and what had happened so far. That's when I found out Herschel had died, and I started crying.
You're like, but David Morrissey's around, right?
Like, now he's gone too, and I'm like, why am I working on this job?
But, quit in the moment. I'm done. No.
But that was really cool. And then he was like, hey, man, here's my number, if you need anything. And, of course, I'm like, I'm never going to text him. That'd be weird. And then he's texting me saying, hey, are you all settled? Is everything cool? Do you want to go golfing? And I was like, yes. He's, people talk about Norman being the biggest star of the show. This is Andy's show, and he really sets the tone for everything.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's an arrogant jerk and all that, that's going to trickle down. And it's going to make a set that's not fun to be on.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's very humble, he's sweet, he's a loving guy, the entire cast and crew just works together as a family, and it's all because it starts with him. And that's what's awesome, man, because you just don't get that with every show. It's very special.
And then you mentioned, we know you have a comedy background and you're in improv groups and have done a lot of improv. Is there a lot of chance for that on set, or do the actors pretty much have to stick to the script? Are they allowed to kind of play around
like
with their
your
role?
Dino Walkers? Was that scripted?
You just read that stuff up before.
That was, that was all scripted. I mean, there's very little room to improvise, and it's not that they're standing there going, don't you improvise,
Yeah.
You really don't need to. They do everything for you. And as much as we're talking about like, oh, that's a little Easter eggs here and there, I mean, they think through every little bit.
Yeah.
So whatever I can think of in the moment, I guarantee will not be as good as what they, spent 6 months thinking about. There was one little thing that I improvised, and I was scared to say it, but I did it anyway. In one of the episodes when Tara found the penny on the railroad tracks, and all I said is, "Oh hell yeah, score!" And that just came out, and I went to Greg Nicotero, who's directing that episode, and I said, "I'm sorry, I improvised." He's like, "I loved it. We're keeping it." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And he goes, "Don't do it again." So there's not a lot of room, and honestly, you don't want to. I mean, a lot of the writers have improv backgrounds too, so they're just good writers. They're really good.
I gotta say, what I love about Eugene in the comics, without giving anything away in the comics and here, I think, is that we really, when we're seeing Eugene, he's just incredibly socially awkward.
Yeah.
And he's got some hidden agenda, but there's definitely something odd about him.
Uh-huh.
But I feel like there's definitely a lot of room to see this character grow.
Yeah, I think that was the one thing that was really cool that Scott had talked to me about. Is just that, yes, here's the character. This is what we're going for in this situation. But we're going to continually be tweaking it, and not making big changes, but little things here and there along the way. And that's fun because it almost makes the change and the just puts more fun into playing that character, just knowing that there's going to be little minor tweaks and changes that aren't necessarily going to contradict each other, but it's just going to keep it fresh and interesting instead of having to wait it out and for 2 seasons and then you find out another little tidbit about the guy. You're like, oh great, now I got something new to play. Scott's been really good at saying, this is it, but it is going to change a little bit, and there is some room to kind of grow in that because he is socially awkward. and that's fun. That's fun to play,
Yeah.
man. You know, he's a weird guy, quirky.
And
Well, I was
I
gonna
just want to say
say-
you're hot.
with your comedy background, I feel like it almost also comes into play with his character because there are moments for us as an audience where he's provided that comic relief.
Yeah, and I'm really sensitive to that because I don't, you know, I'm not trying to ham it up or anything.
Well,
you know,
that's not
but-
in that sense. It's because you feel like it's that character. That's just who he is.
You're
That's
just
what's
playing
great
it
about
so
it.
straight. What I
his
love,
personality. Yeah.
you're just playing it straight, which is I
Yeah.
think something that comedians do really, really well. They're used to being absurd. They can play it in such a straight way that sometimes dramatic people can't do.
You have to play it real and truthful, and that sort of thing. And it, you know, when I was on a sitcom, it's all big and loud and crazy, and that's like that sort of genre. You have to really kind of flip that switch off and go in a different direction. And some of the writers came up to me after I like shot up the truck with the machine gun, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, it was so hilarious!" And I got scared. I'm like, "No, I don't want it to be hilarious." They're like, "No, it's good. It's working." You know, because it's kind of grounded in this reality, and that's what you want. And ultimately, Eugene is a weird guy. He's quirky, and he's, you know, socially awkward and everything. And those people are interesting, and they're funny. You know, funny, not to make fun of, but just to observe and go, oh my gosh. I mean, Eugene doesn't move his arms when he walks. You know, it's like people who walk like that are funny. I'm sorry, they're just funny. So I think, you know, there is some humor in this character, but I'm certainly not looking for it. You know, I
Yeah.
think it's
Well, no,
I'm trying to ground
I
it
do
in that
mean you're
reality.
playing it straight when I say that, but I just mean I feel like you're able to pull that out of his character with that. But it is very much play straight.
Very
It's not like
believable, yeah.
for the moment they're like, let me get the laugh. It's like, all right, this is who he is as a character.
Yeah.
I think the biggest laugh was when you hit on, or you know, when Eugene hit on Tara.
Oh,
You
yeah,
just
that's
on,
pretty great.
I
Yeah.
like girls. I know that.
Yeah,
That was one of the favorite things.
Yeah, we did a few different versions of that, and everyone was on set that day was asking, like, do you think he really knew? And you know, personally, I think he didn't know, but he's not going to let people know. But I wanted to give them enough choices that they could, whatever version they use, they can tell what story they wanted to tell. And the version they use, I don't even know. I didn't even get a sense that he knew or didn't know off of that. So I don't even know what's going on with that. But yeah, I think he totally knew. But he's one of those guys that's gonna, if he doesn't know something, he's not gonna let you know that he's gonna BS his way through it.
Is that foreshadowing something?
Oh, look at you! You're starting to pick up now that yes, Eugene is gonna turn Tara.
There we go. That's what it is.
Come to the mullet of life.
I mean, if anybody's gonna turn her on that show,
Clearly.
it's gonna be the mullet of life.
So-
Eugene is becoming a sex symbol, really, and his mullet is a lot like Daryl's arms. I have large calves. I want to get that going.
You better
people
watch
talk about
out.
Daryl's arms and Eugene's calves, and that would be great.
Those
The
teen
perfect man.
fangirls are rabid like walkers, so you better watch out.
Well, I noticed you get some weird tweets too. Like people are like, "Can I feel your hair? Can I, you know?"
Oh, I know.
all these different
Oh,
kinds
you
of
got. Okay, so I follow a bunch of the fans too because if you know, why not? Like it doesn't matter. It's, you know, some people don't want to follow. They want to follow 20 people, but I'll follow 1,000. I don't care, and read through and favorite a tweet or whatever. It's great. But what that I didn't realize that the door that opens is they can
So
direct
follow
message me now.
Josh.
So you can get DMs.
So I'm getting DMs that you think the tweets are funny. I mean, I'm getting some crazy DMs, and I have to I got to be careful with that because
Yeah.
I don't. That's like a slippery slope. I feel
Yeah.
like.
I'm so curious now, but
That you just send like emojis. It's like, oh, smiley face.
Yeah, just respond LOL to everything. Like just avoid this.
well, we do need to talk about predictions. Speaking of things happening in the future, so we should probably get to our predictions for next season. In which, Josh, what are your predictions?
My prediction is I'm. Whoa.
We got a little bumper for that.
There, I didn't mean to talk
And
over
the
the
lights are
bumper.
good.
Oh, that's fine.
No big deal.
My prediction is I will be alive in the first episode of season 5. I'm having a meeting with Scott and all the writers this
Oh,
week,
great.
so I'm really excited.
And
to
he's
find
gonna
out.
watch this and be like, I can't believe you said that.
He's
I can't
like,
believe
yeah,
you gave that away.
Spoiled it.
So you'll come back next week after the meeting. And
Oh yeah, and I'll
that's
tell you
it,
guys
right?
everything.
Oh,
Absolutely.
great, perfect. That's what we wanted to
So
hear.
you really don't know anything that's gonna go down next
No,
season.
I mean honestly, it wasn't even until after we shot everything that they told us what happened to our group and how we got put in the boxcar, which I'm not supposed to talk about, but it's like they didn't even tell us beforehand. They waited until after they shot the episode, and Scott said, hey, by the way, do you want to know how that all went down? We're like, oh, sure. So they're really selective as to who they tell and what they tell, just because they don't want that info getting out at all.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and talk about our predictions for next season. I mean, I gotta say, I do think they're cannibals. I definitely think they're cannibals, and I think I think that Tyrese and Carole are gonna actually end up meeting up and helping them save the day. But we're gonna lose someone. I think we're gonna lose someone. So
I still have a bad feeling about that part of Beth is on the barbecue or something.
Yeah.
I tend to think one of the reasons maybe they're leaving Carole and Tyrese out at this point is because they still have Judith, and I feel like bringing her into this would add a whole nother level, because now we just had, the
I hope they don't like
scene,
veal.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It was almost, with Carl.
Couldn't help it.
I think one of them will end up getting out and trying to get the weapons.
Yeah.
That's going to be my guess.
I'm going to go with definitely that I think Tyrese and Carole are going to play an instrumental part about helping them get out of the situation they're in right now, the group. And I think that Bob, I still want to go with my prediction 2 weeks ago, Bob's going to be the next one to bite it.
Okay. I'm pretty much agreeing with all you guys, but I think that the person that was limping last week is the most likely to go. So that would be Tara. I think Tara would be the most likely one to go, but someone definitely has to go.
She seems to have a problem with that leg, because I was watching earlier when they were running away with the governor.
So Owen Harper on the chat saying, "At Mullet of Life is available. Runs to go claim this Twitter account."
Let's see the DMs on Mullet of Life. Let's go there.
Yeah, right.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I do want to give a shout out to Cody of Good Day Sacramento. He actually had me on his show for this morning to talk about Walking Dead and AfterBuzz. So thank you so much for having me on Good Day Sacramento. It was a really fun time. And guys, you can follow me. I'm Dave Klein on Twitter at @TheDaveKlein. That's Klein. And be sure to catch me next week for Game of Thrones. So Game of Thrones wrap up next week.
And I'm Kristin Carole. You can find me on Twitter, Kristin Carole 13, and I also do Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
I'm Derrial Christon. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and Black Hollywood Live.
Before we say me, let's hear from you and your Twitter handle.
Oh,
and thank you there.
Josh McDermitt. That's McDermitt.
We'll follow you back.
That is, I will follow you back.
Actually, you followed me, so
I did.
we're already following you.
You know why? Because you didn't ask me to follow you. If you ask me to follow you, I won't follow you. But if you just interact with me, I'll follow you.
I won't send you creepy DMs.
Awesome.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Then forget it.
That's why he does it.
I'll get on that right now.
And you can follow me at Nando Vel, Nandovel, and you can catch me here on AfterBuzz for the following: Hannibal, Blacklist, Bates Motel, and coming soon, Orphan Black.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a list.
I know.
Busy, man. You are busy.
I got no life.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us this season, and we will see you guys next season. Bye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Bye. See you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.
Thank you for watching AfterBuzz TV on YouTube. For more of your favorite after shows and interviews, subscribe to our channel here, and be sure to share your opinion on the episode in the comment section below here. We'd love to see what you guys are buzzing about. Thanks again. Buzz you later.